One rifle didn't win the war, but one gave an army the power to rewrite tactics. Meet the weapons that force tactics to change. Today, we're breaking down the rifles that shaped World War II, the tools carried by millions, the machines that decided life and death on every front. These weren't just weapons. They were feats of engineering that redefined modern combat. From the semi-automatic Garand that revolutionized warfare, to the indestructible Soviet Mosin-Nagant, to the fast-cycling Lee Enfield and precision German Mauser. We'll see how each worked, what made it unique, and why there was no single best rifle, only the right weapon for the right job. Let's dive in. The M1 Garand was the first semi-automatic rifle ever issued to an entire army. While most of the world's soldiers were still cycling bolts by hand, American troops just kept pulling the trigger. Each shot automatically ejected the spent case and chambered the next round, fast, smooth, and deadly. It fired the powerful .30-06 cartridge, weighed about 4.3 kilograms, and held 8 rounds in an en-bloc clip. Once you fired the last shot, the clip popped out with that famous ping sound. That ping became legendary. Enemies sometimes waited to hear it, thinking the American was reloading. But clever GIs learned to toss empty clips on purpose to trick them. Smart move. Inside, the Garand used a long-stroke gas piston system. When you fired, some gas vented through a small hole near the muzzle, pushing a piston connected to a long operating rod. That rod drove the bolt backward, kicked out the empty shell, and loaded a new one, all in a fraction of a second. The downside? You couldn't top off the clip. You either fired all 8 rounds or ejected the clip early and wasted ammo, but in exchange, you got unbeatable firepower. General George S. Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. And in practice, he was right. In head-to-head combat, an American with a Garand could outshoot 3 enemies with bolt actions. That's why it became the symbol of American infantry, fast, rugged, and reliable. Not everyone needed a full-size rifle. Tank crews, paratroopers, radio operators, they needed something lighter. Enter the M1 carbine. Half the weight of a Garand, firing a smaller .30 carbine round, it was quick, compact, and easy to handle. With a 15 or 30 round detachable magazine, it gave support troops real firepower without the bulk. In tight quarters, city streets, bunkers, jungles, the M1 carbine was perfect, fast, light, and simple. No wonder soldiers loved it. Before the Garand, U.S. troops carried the Springfield M1903, a classic bolt-action rifle inspired by the German Mauser. It fired the same .30-06 cartridge, but with a 5-round internal magazine. The M1903 was beautifully precise, using a Mauser-style bolt with 3 locking lugs for incredible strength. It was a sniper's dream, smooth to operate, dead accurate, and nearly indestructible. Even after the Garand became standard, Marine snipers kept their M1903s, fitting them with 10 times unertl scopes. In skilled hands, they were deadly out past 800 meters. There was even a trench periscope version, allowing soldiers to shoot while staying behind cover. Clever, if a bit awkward in practice. The Springfield story actually begins before World War I. After studying captured German Mausers from the Spanish-American War, U.S. ordnance officers realized the American Krag rifle was outclassed. So in 1903, The U.S. Army essentially built its own improved Mauser. The result was the M1903 Springfield. The Germans even sued for patent infringement, and won. The U.S. paid Mauser royalties until World War I broke out. Early Springfields were chambered for the .30-03 cartridge, but that was quickly replaced by the new .30-06 Springfield, faster, flatter, and more powerful. That round would go on to define American military ballistics for half a century. On the range, the M1903 was superb, capable of sub-minute accuracy with good ammunition. Its bolt cycled like glass, and its long sight radius gave it excellent precision for iron sights. Soldiers often said it felt more like a finely tuned hunting rifle than a mass-produced military weapon. During World War I, production ramped up so fast that the U.S. couldn't keep up. To fill the gap, America introduced the Model 1917 Enfield, which shared the .30-06 cartridge, but had a different design. Even so, the Springfield remained the symbol of American marksmanship. By World War II, it had become the M1903A3, a simplified mass-production model with stamped parts and an aperture rear sight for faster aiming. Sniper variants like the M1903A4 carried Weaver scopes and served all the way through the Korean War. American snipers in the Pacific used them to pick off entrenched Japanese positions well beyond return fire range. Even decades later, collectors and competitive shooters still prize the M1903 for its balance, precision, and history. It wasn't just a rifle, it was the bridge between the old world of bolt actions and the new age of semi-automatic firepower. If you ask any gun historian to name the finest bolt action ever made, you'll hear the same answer again and again: the Mauser 98. And the Carabiner 98K, or Car 98K, was its perfected wartime version, shorter, handier, and built like a tank. The Car 98K fired the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge, powerful, flat shooting, and deadly accurate. The rifle was solid steel and walnut, weighing around 3.9 kilograms. What made it special wasn't the power, it was the action. The Mauser bolt used what's called controlled round feed. As soon as a cartridge left the magazine, a big claw extractor grabbed it and didn't let go until the empty case was ejected. That meant the rifle could be fired at any angle, upside down, caked in mud, or filled with snow, and it would still run. That's why hunters and snipers still use Mauser-style actions today. It had 3 locking lugs for massive strength, 2 at the front, 1 safety lug at the rear, plus gas relief holes that vented away from the shooter in case a cartridge blew up. Over-engineered? Maybe. But that's the German way. German snipers loved it. With Zeiss ZF-39 scopes, crystal clear, precise, and tough, they could make accurate shots beyond 800 meters. Many Allied soldiers who faced them learned just how dangerous a single, well-placed round could be. The Car 98K's only real weakness? Rate of fire. Even with the smoothest bolt, a good rifleman could only fire 15 aim shots per minute, far slower than a Garand's 40 to 50. And by 1944, things were getting desperate. To save metal and time, Germany started making Car 98s without bayonet lugs or cleaning rods. A small detail, but it showed how stretched their industry had become. Still, as a piece of engineering, the Car 98K remains legendary. It's not just a rifle, it's the blueprint for every modern bolt action since. The Germans knew they were falling behind in firepower. When they captured Soviet SVT-40s and faced American Garands, the difference was obvious. They needed a semi-automatic rifle, fast. Their answer came in 1943, the Gewehr 43, or G43. It used a short-stroke gas piston and had a detachable 10-round magazine, actually more capacity than the Garand. It was rugged, reliable for a semi-auto, and most versions came with a built-in scope rail and ZF4 optic, turning it into an early designated marksman rifle. On paper, it was excellent. In reality, too little, too late. By the time production ramped up, Germany was already losing factories to Allied bombing and running out of materials. Only about 400,000 G43s were made, compared to over 5 million M1 Garands. It could have been a game changer, but history doesn't wait for perfect timing. The G43 arrived when the war was already slipping away. Now let's head east, to the rifle that refused to die. The Mosin-Nagant was designed way back in 1891, and half a century later, it was still the Soviet Union's main rifle in World War II. Think about that. A 19th century design dominating the deadliest conflict in history. Over 37 million were made. That's not a weapon. That's an industrial force of nature. The Mosin fired the powerful 7.62 by 54 mm R round, the same cartridge Russian snipers still use today. It was big, heavy, and not exactly elegant, but it worked, always. You could freeze it in a block of ice, dunk it in mud, or bury it in snow, and it would still fire. Soldiers fought with them in -40-degree Siberian winters, in the rubble of Stalingrad, and through blizzards in Finland. The Mosin didn't care. Mechanically, it was simple: 2 front locking lugs, a strong bolt, and minimal moving parts. The bolt head could even be removed for cleaning, a lifesaver in the field. One strange quirk: the Mosin was zeroed with the bayonet attached. Take it off, and the point of impact shifted. So most Soviet soldiers kept it fixed, permanently. Later versions even had folding bayonets for that reason. Sniper versions used the PU scope, 3.5 times magnification, simple but tough. Not fancy like the German Zeiss glass, but rugged enough for frontline hell. Soviet snipers like Vasily Zaitsev made 225 confirmed kills at Stalingrad. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the most successful female sniper in history, had 309. Both used the Mosin. Slow? Sure. Awkward? Absolutely. But when you're fighting for your homeland in -40 degrees Celsius with half your army gone, reliability is everything. And the Mosin delivered. The Soviets actually did have a semi-automatic rifle, the SVT-40, designed by Fyodor Tokarev. On paper, it was fantastic. Gas-operated 10-round detachable magazine, same powerful cartridge as the Mosin. The Germans captured so many, they even issued them to their own troops, calling them the G259. But the SVT had one fatal flaw: it was picky. It needed constant cleaning and high-quality ammo. In the freezing mud and chaos of 1941, it jammed a lot. The gas ports clogged, the moving parts froze, and maintenance was nearly impossible. The Soviets ran the numbers. They could build 3 Mosins for the time and resources it took to make one SVT-40. In a total war for survival, the choice was simple: By 1942, production of the SVT dropped sharply, and the Mosin returned as the main rifle. The lesson? The best weapon isn't the most advanced, it's the one that works when everything else fails. The Lee Enfield is a delightful contradiction. It's a bolt action, old school by design, but it's built for speed, real speed. The standard SMLE and later No. 4 Enfield used a 10-round magazine and a bolt that only needed a 60-degree lift. That shorter rotation made cycling the bolt much faster than a Mauser's 90-degree throw. Add excellent magazine capacity and a drill-trained rifleman, and you get 20 to 30 aim shots per minute. In World War I, British soldiers fired so quickly with Lee Enfields that Germans sometimes thought they were facing machine guns. That reputation followed the rifle into World War II. The trade-off? Rear-locking lugs made the action slightly less rigid than a Mauser, so at extreme distances it wasn't quite as pinpoint accurate. But in most real-world fights, trenches, hedgerows, and villages, rate of fire mattered more than 1-inch groups at 800 meters. It's a brilliant example of design matched to doctrine. Train your men, and the rifle becomes a force multiplier. Japan's rifles weren't flashy, but they were thoughtful. The Type 99 Arisaka is a good example. Early models were well made, with tight tolerances and fine finishing. Two features stand out for the Pacific Theater: a chrome-lined barrel and a folding monopod. Chrome lining resisted the corrosive tropical humidity, a huge plus on jungle islands, and the monopod helped steady long shots from prone positions. The Type 99 used a larger 7.7 millimeter cartridge than earlier Type 38s, giving it more punch. But as the war dragged on, quality slipped. Late war rifles had cruder finishes, wooden butt plates, and occasionally unsafe barrels. The logistics and bombing of industry took their toll. The Type 99 was part of Japan's late-war modernization effort, an attempt to match Western firepower while keeping the rugged simplicity of the Arisaka family. It fired the 7.7 by 58 millimeter round, roughly equivalent to the British .303 cartridge, with strong performance up to 600 to 800 meters. Its sights were unusual. Many rifles came with folding anti-aircraft wings on the rear sight, little metal arms meant to help track enemy planes. In practice, they were almost useless, but they've become one of the rifle's most distinctive visual features. Another interesting detail was the imperial chrysanthemum, a 16-petal flower engraved on the receiver, the mark of the emperor. Every rifle bearing it was considered imperial property, and surrendering one intact was a cultural taboo. Many captured Type 90s had their chrysanthemum ground off before being handed over, a small but powerful symbol of defeat. Early first-series rifles were exceptional, beautifully machined and highly reliable. But by 1944 to 45, production shortcuts became desperate: rough machining, mismatched parts, even substitute materials like wooden butt plates and simplified sights. Some so-called last-ditch Type 99s lacked safety knobs or monopods entirely. They still fired, but comfort and finish were long gone. Despite that decline, the Arisaka action itself was one of the strongest of the war. Even poorly made rifles rarely failed catastrophically. American ordnance tests after the war confirmed it could handle extreme chamber pressures, stronger than both the Mauser and the Springfield in some cases. So while the Type 99 may look rough, it was far from fragile. It was Japan's best attempt to fight a modern war under impossible conditions, and it earned respect from those who faced it. The Type 38 was a very long rifle firing a light 6.5 millimeter round. Mild recoil, good for accurate aimed fire, but less stopping power. Japanese doctrine emphasized bayonet attacks and infantry shock, which partially offset the light cartridge. Early Arisakas were reliable and well-liked, late war ones less so. Introduced in 1905, the Type 38 Arisaka had already served for over 3 decades by the time World War II broke out. Yet it remained a core infantry weapon. It was over 127 centimeters long, almost as tall as some of the soldiers who carried it, and built to fire the 6.5 by 50 millimeter cartridge, a small, efficient round designed for controllable recoil and high accuracy. The idea behind the 6.5 millimeter round was simple. Lighter ammunition meant soldiers could carry more of it, fire faster, and maintain better accuracy in rapid fire. It was a logical choice in 1905. But by 1940, most other armies had shifted to heavier, more powerful calibers. Still, the Type 38 earned a reputation for extreme reliability. Like the later Type 99, its bolt and receiver were massively overbuilt for safety. American tests after the war found that even under overloaded pressures, Type 38 actions rarely failed. The rifle's ergonomics were dated, a long reach to the bolt handle, a slow 5-round internal magazine, and iron sights optimized for ranges that real combat no longer demanded. But the craftsmanship was superb. Early rifles made in Tokyo or Nagoya arsenals had smooth actions and perfect machining. During the Pacific Campaign, many Type 38s were cut down into carbine versions for jungle warfare, known as the Type 38 short rifle. They sacrificed some range but were far easier to handle in dense terrain. American soldiers who captured Arisakas often remarked on how light the recoil was and how tough the rifles felt, even after years in harsh conditions. The Type 38 was simply built to last. Japanese troops often carried them with bayonets fixed, turning their long rifles into literal spears during assaults. That practice came straight from Japan's martial tradition, a fusion of old-world discipline and modern warfare. Though overshadowed by the later Type 99, the Type 38 remained in widespread service right to the end of the war, a testament to how reliable it truly was. Some of these rifles even saw post-war use across Asia, from China to Indonesia, proving that a good design can outlive the empire that built it. The Italian Carcano used a Mannlicher en-bloc clip. Load the clip, it stays in the rifle, and drops out when empty. That made reloads very fast. But the bottom ejection port was a weakness in sand and dust. North African campaigns exposed that flaw. Carcanos often used a 6.5 millimeter cartridge, pleasant to shoot, accurate, but light on impact. By 1940, it was already showing its age. Yet, despite its reputation, the Carcano wasn't a bad rifle, just a product of an outdated doctrine. Italy favored lighter recoil and long-range accuracy on paper, rather than stopping power up close. The result was a rifle that performed well on the range but struggled in real combat against harder-hitting rounds like the .3006 or 7.92 millimeters. Italian troops still managed to use it effectively in North Africa and the Balkans. Skilled marksmen could make the 6.5 millimeter round count, and the simple, smooth action meant the rifle rarely jammed. Italy even tried to modernize it. In 1938, they rechambered some rifles for a new 7.35 millimeter round, hoping for more punch. But logistics chaos and the start of war forced a quick return to the old 6.5 millimeter. Ironically, the Carcano's Mannlicher clip system, seen as old-fashioned, would later inspire features in post-war rifle designs, proving that even obsolete ideas can survive when they work. The MAS-36 was a short, rugged French rifle with clever design details. For example, the bayonet stored inside the butt. It was modern for 1936 and useful enough that the Germans reissued captured stocks. The Mannlicher M, 1895 from Austria-Hungary, used a straight pull bolt, a single backward motion to cycle, faster than a turn bolt, but more complex. These rifles highlight a theme. National needs and manufacturing capabilities shaped designs as much as ballistics did. In close-range fights, urban combat, jungle ambushes, trench raids, semi-automatic rifles dominated. The Garand G43, where available, and SVT-40, when reliable, outclassed bolt actions simply by putting more rounds downrange faster. The M1 carbine's lightweight and high-capacity magazines made it excellent in buildings and vehicles. At long ranges, bolt actions return to form. Mechanical rigidity and simple lock bolts make them inherently consistent, shot to shot. Kar 98KS with Zeiss glass, Mosins with PU scopes, and Springfields with Unertls. All were sniper tools for distances beyond what semis could reliably manage at the time. For dug-in defense, the Lee Enfield and Garand were both excellent. Volume of accurate fire matters when you're holding a line, and both rifles delivered. When everything gets filthy or freezing, simple wins. The Mosin-Nagant is the poster child for works when nothing else does. Over-engineered actions like the Kar 98K came close, precise and reliable, but complex semi-autos like the SVT-40 struggled in the worst conditions. So what's the takeaway? There wasn't a single best rifle in World War II. There were right rifles for right jobs. The Americans won a firepower advantage with the Garand. Semi-automatic rifles changed the tempo of infantry combat forever. The Germans built the precision benchmark with the Mauser action and the best optics of the time. The Soviets built for survival. The Mosin-Nagant simply kept working when everything else failed. The British optimized for trained volume fire with the Lee Enfield, and many nations kept older or quirky designs because of logistics, doctrine, or economy. The real lesson is this: design is a conversation between technology, tactics, and production. A brilliant rifle means nothing if you can't build enough of them, or your soldiers can't maintain them in mud and snow. These rifles weren't just metal and wood. They were carried by scared, determined people. They decided battles, saved lives, and shaped history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video, subscribe for more tech-focused history, and tell us in the comments, which rifle would you pick to carry into the field and why? Like, subscribe, and see you next time.